So we're going to start on that note with Mr. Shaun Belcher over there. I'll let you introduce yourself, but the stage is yours. Give it a round of applause.
I'm also going to bring up Vishakh Null from Cryptonomic, because Tezos is not a single organization. And can you hear me now?
That's for the camera.
Oh, it's for the camera. Sorry, I'll speak louder. This is Vishakh Null of Cryptonomic. His team has done some of our core tooling for with Aeronox, Kunsai, Galleon Wallet, and a number of other tools on Tezos for our developers. So please give him a round of applause. So Tezos as a blockchain has a value proposition that over the last few years we've seen how fork-based governance has really worked, and it's not very efficient. So effectively in 2014, the proposal came about through Arthur Brightman that Tezos has a different value proposition to not lose the network effect that fork-based governance seems to bleed off over time. The idea is to keep your network whole, and at least at a bare minimum, in a conservative manner, allow the end user to veto bad amendments to the protocol. So that's basically at a core value. As far as some of the additions to it, we have LPOS for a consensus mechanism, which proof of stake is still being accepted by the greater community. We're not quite sure how that's going to work in the long run. We haven't seen it work without proof of work on the back ends. So it's still a new venture. We have introduced our first voting cycle on the governance aspect. So we are in cycle 1, and it's a very small amendment to basically change gas limits and lower the roll size required to bake on the network. Baking is just sort of a fun, playful way for us to say validating or staking on the network. And I mean, we have a lot of French core developers, so culinary is kind of our thing. If you haven't seen us on Twitter or some of the other social media, you might see various bakers or references to tacos. So that is us. But I'm not really with the core development group. I'm with the community. So my organization in particular is Tezos Commons. We're a Utah-based nonprofit organization, and our goal is to grow the community and spread awareness of what Tezos is and what Tezos does. We actually started a year ago, and so I'm proud to be native to Boston, and so I'm glad to be meeting with all of you and actually seeing hackathons here. We're kind of competing with New York in the Northeast. He's one of our friends, a few hours away. But I think largely we want to see if can we have self-governance? Can we coordinate resources on chain? Can we return some of the control over these projects back to the stakeholders? And if we can we expand that and add other features? Can you govern corporate resources? Treasuries? This is largely just starting to be explored. There's not much for legal entities or legal recognition of these type of entities in the real world, which is why we exist in the first place. Because people like myself are just very interested in self-governance and our ability to coordinate and share resources among large groups. So that's just a little bit about who Tezos Commons is as an organization. Vishakh, would you like to talk a little bit about Cryptonomic and the role that they play?
Do I go to the mic or? Okay.
It's for the television.
What was that?
It's just for the television.
Oh.
So you have to speak up a little bit.
So once again, I'm Vishakh. Really happy to be here. So Cryptonomic is a company based in Brooklyn. We're committed to disintermediation, decentralization. We work with multiple chains, but right now Tezos is our priority. So I'm going to be a little bit shameless. So this is a multi-chain hackathon, and I'd encourage you to build with Tezos. I have worked a lot with Ethereum in the past. some of what motivates Tezos are the lessons that we've learned from building on Ethereum. So Tezos lends itself better to formal verification, more robust contracts in the functional programming paradigm. And it's the fork or the governance mechanism in the longer term, not for the hackathon, it ensures that there's less fork risk. So when you build an application that's more mission critical, you're already doing formal verification, you're already writing in a functional style, this kind of predictability with where the platform's going to go is really good, especially if you're building an ecosystem of apps. So Ethereum, there's a lot of momentum already. People have tried it out. Many projects have been built. You're not going to be able to do anything fundamentally new today, but with Tezos you can. And it's early days, but we have enough tooling that you're not going to be in the absolute frontier. So we have some people already building in that corner, and we're ironing out some issues, but the tooling is there. You can build something that's a good prototype over the weekend. And if you're so inclined later on, you can formally verify it. You might have to spend a lot of energy on that, but you can do that. And you can kind of check out this alternate platform that lends itself really well to finance, insurance, any mission-critical domains where your application just needs to work, right? You're not collecting kittens or whatever. You're actually building a real-world app. So not knocking Ethereum, but I think it's a very fascinating project to work on.
One of the unique properties of Tezos is that we're entirely written in OCaml, and while we're not going to, or there's not plans to rewrite the protocol in another language, the node, the shell, the other tooling, we are starting to write in other languages, such as Rust, which is being done by Uri at Simple Staking. And this is going to start to allow other developers to really participate if they do have interest in our project. And we think that's really important because I don't know if any of you have worked with OCaml before. It's a little bit of an obscure language. It has a very specific purpose, and it serves those needs. It's basically in high value, high risk, high finance type situations where you can't afford to have a runtime error occur. And there's some other similar languages that people have pursued on projects like Cardano to basically achieve the same thing. Allow for formal verification. It's not really a feature. It's more that we're written to allow to enable it. So we hope to help build out some tooling around formal verification. But yeah, for core protocol, we are trying to spread some awareness about OCaml if you are interested, because the entire design of governance in general does resolve one of the issues that I always look for is just it's long-term funding for developers. Core development on a protocol, we've seen numerous projects that just kind of got, they became irrelevant, or the developers lacked interest, probably because they might not have had the funds to continue, or maybe they would have continued those projects and we wouldn't have existed. So funding of development long-term is extremely important, not in necessarily like a community aspect. You can see that with Bitcoin. It's basically fueled its own economy and just continued to build out. But at at the core development level, you need some sort of support. And that also, so being able to inflate the chain at an invoice price, but it also adds other complications such as, well, at what price is this code good, and at what point are you not adding value? So we're kind of paving the way. It's just trailblazing in a new area, and so it is highly experimental. But if you do have interest, you can come to Tezos.com or join us on Reddit and in our other social media, which we can post the links on. And yeah, we'd like all of you to join the conversation. And thank you for coming out to BUIDLBoston today.
What's the prize money for?
Oh yeah. So our prize, it's actually I didn't come in here and say like let's throw down a bunch of money. We're a small organization. It's actually very specific. It's a role size. So in Tezos, if you have a small stake in it, you can delegate and to a baker or a validator. And so we decided why not put up enough XDZ that if somebody wins, the winner building on Tezos would be able to bake if they choose, if they don't want to dump it, they can choose to join the network and actually bake for themselves. So that's actually the reasoning around the number.
Well, how much is it again?
It's 10,000 XDZ. But it's what?
It's like 12,000.
It wasn't that when we started.
No, but it is today.
It is today.
Wait, did you say $12,000?
He said about 12. It's about, yeah, it's about.
I checked it 1.3
But,
years
yeah.
ago, and it was like 15. So
It was up there. It was a lot lower before, and the roll size is also coming down due to the amendment that's going through. As long as the vote finishes. So, so you know, there's a couple variables in there. But yes, there's 10,000 XDZ if you're building on Tezos. Feel free to come up and ask us questions. And I was asked to talk about grants. It's not my specialty as a community organization. I do try to contract people for very small community projects. But we also have other groups where we're decentralized off-chain. We have a Swiss foundation who has a full grants program. There's also the Tocqueville group in New York that offers ecosystem grants, which are smaller. They're about up to 50,000. For people who are interested in building various projects or research that's in surrounding or basically within their interest.
And Cryptonomic received a grant from the Tezos Foundation. So all the tools we have today, we built that based on this generous grant from the Tezos Foundation. It really helped us build something really robust, mission critical.
Can you tell them about the technical stack that you built?
Oh, sure, yeah. So we have a bunch of tools that right now we're focused on Tezos. The first is Nautilus. It's an infrastructure layer. So what that means today is you don't have to run your own nodes or your own APIs. It's all already running. We'll give you an API key, and you can start building immediately. We have Consay, which is an API and a server. So it's an indexer in front of the blockchain. You can run very rich queries against the blockchain. You can say, give me the top 10 accounts which delegate to entity X, where the accounts also made a transaction between blocks 7,000 and 9,000. It's a really poor example, but you can ask very complex questions of the blockchain. We also have Consay.js, which is a client-side library. So if there's JavaScript developers here today, you can just import it as an NPM package and start hacking with Tezos immediately. We have tutorials for all of this stuff. We have Aronax, which is a block explorer. The block explorers that you guys are used to, it's just a search bar, you put in an ID. Aronax piggybacks on top of Consay, lets you ask complex questions of the blockchain. So if you want to have a look, you're free to stop by and just kind of play with it for a little bit. And then some of the other projects are, we have an open source wallet framework for Tezos called Tezori. And we have our own deployment called Galleons. And the reason we did this is because this whole ecosystem is very decentralized. So we don't want anyone to trust us. We want you to run your own deployment of the code if you want to. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I can't talk about yet, but are coming out in the next few months. All of these tools are available for your use this weekend at this hackathon. If there are bugs, we can spot them live. So you know, maybe some of the other libraries, if there's a bug, you're going to get a 2-week turnaround here. Like, we'll fix it in front of you. Yeah, that's in that sense. And and just for the grants thing, highly encourage everyone to apply. A lot of smart people have received grants. It's a lower friction process than anything I've seen in the other ecosystems. And one thing that's encouraged is multiple alternatives for the same kinds of tools to increase decentralization, and that's pretty cool, right? Like if there's already an established library for something in, let's say, Rust, and if you want to do it in Scala, I think the Tezos Foundation will definitely be very encouraging of that. So maybe you start something this weekend and it grows into a full-on tool set or whatever. So,
yeah, to kind of wrap it up, we do encourage diversity. We want to see multiple languages and open up options. So, anyways, we're not much for speakers, but thank you for coming out to BUIDLBoston. And I'll hand this off to Shamir.